So I watched this video on love covered life. You know, that lady, I've been on her show before talking about my near-death experience. And she had a guest on who had a very detailed NDE. I shared this video in the community posts. And he really got into detail about his past lives. Like more than almost anybody I've ever heard. And there's some interesting things that I noticed that I wanted to bring up. First of all, he said that the first life he was shown was him being a healer, a natural healer, born in Switzerland in the 1700s. And he lived a very majestic life, providing service to people, healing people, even opening, the first hospital in that region or whatever. It was, the spirit guide told him that this is an example of what happens when you live your life closest to who you truly are. And that bothers me because why be subjected to the test to begin with? Why can't we just be who we truly are and not have to worry about karma or cosmic debt or wronging somebody or going out of alignment of your true nature? Like, what is this overly complicated fluff when we do, on an intuitive level, on a deeper level, we do want to be who we truly are? But this place feels like it's almost impossible to express who you truly are when you're just grinding indefinitely to the bone, day in, day out, with no answers to anything, no clues from your spirit guides. It's just very strange to me that I've had all these experiences, all these dreams and out-of-body experiences, but I've never had a recollection except for maybe my NDE where I met a spirit guide or where I remembered a past life. I have no recollection of any past life whatsoever. And I can understand that to a degree. Real life is a movie reel. It's not real at all. We live in upside down world, codes embedded in our words to speak. Yes. New Age Indoctrination channel. Yeah. She's denying the hell around pleasant. Well, look, I'm still open to all possibilities. I don't know exactly what's going on here. But I do think it would be kind of silly if we fully knew our past lives in this incarnation. I can kind of see that would make the game too easy. Like, there needs to be some kind of element of surprise, I suppose, but there's like not even the slightest clue for most people. At least at the very minimum, have like some kind of flash memory or intuitively things that would stop you doing something you shouldn't be doing. But those things just don't seem to happen for most people. I mean, as far as past lives go, it seems that only young children on occasion have memories of these things. I've never experienced benevolent entities, only malevolent ones. Yeah, I understand what you mean. But going back to the story of this guy. So yeah, he lived that fantastic life. Died at an old age, was married, healed people. And then the next life was the polar opposite of that. So, and I understand there shouldn't necessarily be a linear progression of things, especially in eternity. There is nothing linear. But his next life, he was a scammer and a banker living in New York City, right when the stock exchange opened, like in 1822, and he essentially became a loan shark and loaned these families loans with very high interest rates that they weren't able to pay back, which ended up breaking the families apart and kids living on the streets and so on and so forth. He caused poverty to people. And he was really horrified by this life. He basically ended up in prison where he was shanked to death in the prison. And then he was buried in an unmarked grave. He wanted to emphasize that. So the following life, it was a life of atonement. So he tried to reconcile those things he did. Well, if he just lived this fantastic life as a healer, why is it that he wasn't able to get any information, any subconscious clues whatsoever about that life as a healer into that life when he became a scammer? I mean, perhaps if he had some sort of transference of at least the energetic quality of that life without even necessarily having visual information, that might have guided him out of that scamming life. But no, that didn't happen, did it? So now he has to atone for it. from healer to loan shark. So much for spiritual growth. Mostly circumstances then. I listened to that guy's story and figured we can just look up any records of a stockbroker in the 1800s being sent to Sing Sing prison. He claims that, yeah, he claims that there are. He claims that there is this island off of Long Island Sound where he was buried and that grave is still there. He was saying stuff like that. I mean, I don't have any reason not to believe him. He does seem very sincere. I think his experience was real. Where is this guy? Yes, I mean, I don't know. But anyway, his next life was Spanish flu, 1919. And everyone was dying, millions around the world, because that's a loving thing to do, like always, very loving. And he died at 17 of the Spanish flu. That was it. That was all he saw of that life, and it wasn't enough. He was informed that it was not enough to atone for his behavior as a scammer. So that's when he came to this current life he's living, which he described as pretty shitty. This current life, he experienced a lot of bullying and a lot of, negative things that happened to him. And he fully accepts it, fully thinks of it as a completely normal thing. In conclusion, the main thing I want to ask is why? Why can't we know more about our past lives? Why can't that information come through more easily? Why is it blocked? I mean, why is it deliberately suppressed? Do we do it? Do we suppress it ourselves? What's going on here? Because I think knowing at least something would be beneficial to us. At least something. Seems like we're mind wiped going out. So no, we're not here to learn and grow. Well, okay, before I go, you just brought up a good point. Again, what did I say in the community post? Well, what are your options in playing this game? Primarily, at least from what we know from history, you can either be a slave or a warrior. Sure as hell not going to be a king or a queen. The chances of that are minuscule. Or a noble even. Perhaps 95% of what your options are to be a slave. To be a slave now. To be a slave thousands of years ago. So what is there to learn? Like, what's the learning experience there? I mean, sure, you could say there's different cultures and languages and customs and things like that. Yeah, that's true. But fundamentally, it's all kind of gobbled into the same sort of category. So how many times do you have to be a serf or a warrior to get the picture? Like, what's the learning process? Like, yeah, I don't get it. I'm looking forward. I don't want any memory of this lifetime. We are devolving and degrading, not growing. That's what it seems like. It very much seems that way. People have just completely transformed. They are unrecognizable. Total zombies, total robots. They seem like they're incapable of communication. Like they can only do like animalistic grunts. Like they look at you like a deer in the headlights. It's very bizarre. It's very bizarre.
But let's get to today's topic. This is something that I've talked about before, that I would like to touch on it a little bit deeper this time around, because I haven't done a video like this before and I think it's a good time to do it. So I want to talk about the reincarnation trap. I talked a little bit about reincarnation here and there in some of my past videos, but really never delved into it. So I think this is a good time. Now, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but let me give you my take and how to me it feels the way this stuff works. I see it as some sort of toxic, vicious cycle that we perpetually go through because we are coerced into doing this. Against our will, in a way. And let me explain what I mean by that. think the first time I saw this kind of being explained in this way was by a guy called Robert Morningsky. Yeah, I think it's Robert Morningsky. He's like a Native American writer, and he talks about, this spiritual things and Native American wisdom and all this stuff. That's the first time I heard about it. That was many, many years ago. I remember watching a video of him talking about this and explaining basically how when we lose our physical body, our vessel, the meat suit, the flesh and bone, which is just like clothing basically for our consciousness, our soul. Everybody goes through this similar experience. The reason why we know these things is because of the many NDEs that people have, experienced, and they all have the same similar pattern. And the biggest thing about the pattern is that when people die, and in this case I'm talking about the near-death experiences of people that have, they've had this moment in their lives where they had some sort of medical emergency happen, whatever, and then they were dead for a little bit and then they came back. So what happens is they see this tunnel of light, right? There's this light at the end of the tunnel, the famous phrase, the light at the end of the tunnel. And then for some reason everybody feels allured and drawn into this tunnel, and then they go into it. And then after that, there's this whole process of, they kind of like play your life in some sort of astral projector, whatever the thing is, like call it a spiritual TV, right? And then you kind of like, you go through the things you've done, and, but here's the thing that nobody talks about. And this is why I said this is the first time I heard about this being talked about in this manner. And then later on, after that, I found out that even Elena Blavatsky, back in the 1800s, was talking about the same thing in the same way. So what were they saying? They were basically saying that this tunnel of light is a trap. If you look at the ancient Gnostic teachings, they talk about these entities, let's call them the archons, that's what they call them, which are these beings that they play this role on these realms where they manipulate things. They pretend to be, this is what we are told anyway, and you're free to believe whatever you want to believe, whatever resonates with you, whatever you think it's right. But in my opinion, this makes a lot of sense, and I'm gonna do what I think it's right for me. And then I'll say what I will do, and then I'll talk about how this whole thing works. I am not gonna go into that tunnel of light when I'm gone from this realm. I will tell you that much. I'm done with that crap. I am tired of it. I'm not coming back here for quite some time. When my present, incarnation ends, whenever that happens, I am simply going to ignore that tunnel of light, and I am going to basically probably close my eyes into prayer meditation and just ask to be sent back to source, home, where I know I belong, and where I will be able to decide what's going to be my next step, instead of allowing some shady entity who's pretending to be someone else or some loved one in your family, because this is how these beings operate. It's all deceptive, is all deception. And if we allow ourselves to be deceived in that sense, then they play this whole game of, showing you your past life or multiple lives, whatever, and the things that you've done, how many people you've wronged, and this and that, and and then they convince you that you have to come back to atone for your mistakes and to pay back your karma, whatever the excuse is that they use, it doesn't matter. And then you start feeling bad about things you've done and this and that, and you're like, yeah, that wasn't really nice. I think I'm going to go back and fix things. No, I'm done with that crap. I'm not fixing nothing. Look, based upon my current experience here, this present life that I have, yeah, I think I've done pretty well for myself in that sense. I have lived a life so far being a decent human being. For the most part. No one is perfect, right? We all make mistakes in this and that. But I didn't hurt anybody in a way that would make me feel absolutely terrible about myself. And I didn't kill anybody. I didn't steal. I didn't do any of these things, that maybe could be considered major capital sins, whatever the heck you want to call it. And I'm not gonna allow. First of all, I'm not going into the tunnel, so that's not gonna happen, right? But if you guys end up going to the tunnel somehow, being convinced that you have to go to the tunnel because, a loved one is going to show up and is going to tell you that that's what you have to do, and you're not going to be able to refuse it, keep in mind that they're gonna make you play the victim. And they're going to make you convince yourself that you have to come back. And this is how this game works, and this is how this whole thing happens. So, my advice is be very mindful of these things. Use discernment. Use your heart. Trust yourself more than anything. Do not trust these entities, no matter how loving and how pure and full of light they appear to be. Our physical realm here is filled with deception. And this is also a reflection of some of the upper realms, because that also exists in some of these places, unfortunately. It's just the way the whole construct works. Because you have to understand that there are many levels of realms. And when we pass from this physical reality, we don't go to the highest one right away. There are a lot of factors that weigh into that. We can, if we choose to, but most people don't even know that they have this choice, so they go to the bottom one, the bottom layer, thinking that that's the coolest place to go, and that's where these beings and entities operate from. That's how they get you. Like I said, I'm not here to make you, decide these things, and, don't listen to me. But remember what I talked about here when your day comes, that's what's going to happen, and that's how they're going to try to get you. I'm not falling for that crap. I'm done with that stuff. I don't want to come back here until things have improved dramatically from what they are right now. And we still have a ways to go. I'm going to take a nice spiritual vacation on the other side. I'll put it to you that way. And my suggestion is that you all do the same.